Okay, you can start.
Thank you, Alex. Good evening, everyone, especially to our new members who are here for the first time and to the members of the public who have made time to join us. Hang on just one moment. Welcome to the September 19th, 2022 meeting of the CB6 Housing and Homelessness Committee. My name is Rich Mintz and I'm the chair of the committee. Tonight we are joined by Community Associate Alex Crawford, and this meeting is now called to order at 6:32 p.m. As a reminder, New York state law now requires all community board members to have their cameras on and their first and last names displayed from the time the meeting is called to order until the time the meeting is adjourned. If your camera is not on and your name not properly displayed, you cannot count towards quorum. Members of the public, you can raise any questions or comments that you have through the Q&A feature of Zoom. If there is time following the committee's discussion, we will field questions from the public. And I'll note now that it is my intention to allow some public comment, even though this is not a public hearing, because I know some of you have come to provide some information to the committee. So we'll make time for you in a few minutes. For the record, Mara Wong has volunteered to take minutes tonight. Thank you very much for taking that on. Everyone on the board should have received an email from the board office with a link to a Doodle sign-up sheet for minutes takers. For your convenience, the link has just been posted in the chat by Alex. Thank you very much. We will now take attendance by roll call. Alex will conduct the roll call.
Committee members, I will call your name and you will unmute yourselves. When your name is called, please say present. I will announce if there is quorum. Neil Barclay.
Present.
Abigail Cruzmark. Richard Mintz. Oh,
Present.
Got it. Rich Mintz.
Present.
Sandra Leftoff. Maura Wong.
Present.
Eric Goldberg.
Present.
Michael Devereaux. Nad Kalani.
Present.
And Matthew Weintraub.
Present.
We have a quorum.
Thank you very much, Alex. We're now going to talk about the agenda. The agenda for tonight's meeting was distributed ahead of time by the board office and appears on the screen before you. With the permission of the committee, I would like to reverse the order of these items because I know that we have members of the public who have come for the item on the Department of Homeless Services system, and I'd like to accommodate them first if no one has an objection. So if anyone objects to that or otherwise objects to the agenda, you may raise your hand through Zoom. Seeing no objections, the agenda is adopted in reverse order with the DHS item first. Now we're going to adopt the minutes. The minutes from the May 16th committee meeting were distributed ahead of time. If there's no objection, we will adopt these minutes as drafted. Members of the committee, if you object to adopting the minutes, you may raise your hand through Zoom. Seeing no objections, the minutes from the May 16th committee meeting are adopted and will soon be available on the CB6 website. Some ground rules. In order to conduct an efficient meeting, let's observe some rules. Number one, no one may speak until granted the floor. Number two, committee members, if you have a question about committee business or wish to make a motion, please raise your hand through Zoom. Number three, the chat function should not be used for committee business or questions about agenda topics. All such remarks should be made on the record by raising your hand through Zoom. Chat should only be used to alert us to technical difficulties you are having or to state in writing information like an email address that was already stated aloud on the record during the meeting. Number four, when a committee member is given the floor to speak, I will identify you and you can unmute yourself so that you can speak. Number five, we are required by New York state law to have a transcript of the meeting, so please keep your questions and comments succinct and germane to the discussion. And number six, committee members are required by the state open meetings law to have their Zoom cameras on and your first and last name displayed during tonight's entire meeting, from call to order to adjournment. If you must step away from your computer briefly, you are required to leave your camera on. And one final note, please keep yourself on mute, except when you are speaking, to make sure that there's no interference with other people's sound. So Alex, is there anything that you want to cover in terms of logistics before we proceed into the agenda?
No, I think you covered everything.
Okay. All right, then we will go into the agenda, and our first item is the Department of Homeless Services issues. And I'm going to set some background. Because we have new members today and some members of the public, I'm going to talk a little more than usual and give some background to make sure that everyone is oriented to the topic. So I'm going to speak for a few minutes. We're here to talk about the influx of migrant families into the New York City shelter system and the ways in which it's affected other residents of our district. First, we're going to talk about the general situation, and then we're going to talk about the specific ways some of our other residents are being impacted so that we can give guidance to the CB6 office about issues they might be able to help us resolve. But to start, some general background on homeless shelters in New York, both for our new members and members of the public who have joined us. In New York City, DHS, the Department of Homeless Services, is required by law to accommodate anyone who shows up looking for a shelter bed without restriction. And the community board has no role to play in choosing where facilities for homeless New Yorkers are placed or when they open. We have no influence over where they go, and we don't get to approve them. And that's especially true right now, given that the mayor has declared a state of emergency, which gives DHS the authority to enter into short-term emergency contracts to accommodate people in need. I want to note that the community board is on record as stating that this system needs some reforms. In particular, we are on record as saying that we don't get the notice that we are required so that we can disseminate information to the public and make sure that people are prepared when new facilities open. This was enacted in a resolution in February of this year. And we are on record in 2020 in a letter signed by our chair and some of our electeds as noting that we don't believe that DHS is implementing fair share criteria correctly, resulting in more than our share of facilities to serve homeless people being placed in our community district. If you would like things to change in terms of the way the system is administered, the way to do that is to reach out to your elected officials, in particular your city council members, because change will have to come through legislation if you would like to see anything change. In terms of the process, when facilities open, the city is required to give us notice. And in the past, we've gotten very little notice, which has been frustrating. Sometimes we get information that is not correct, and other times we don't get information at all until a few days before a change happens. If you have quality of life issues related to homeless New Yorkers in your neighborhood, the best place to communicate them is to the CB6 office via the email address help@cbsix.org. They don't have formal power, but they have channels open to our electeds and to the operators of facilities. And they're keeping track of issues that are reported, and the accumulated reports can help them exert pressure to get issues resolved. We're going to talk about some quality of life issues today, but only so that the office has a clear understanding of what the issues are at street level. And what we say today will be reported back to the office. Alex is a part of our CB6 staff, and anything that you email to help@cbsix.org goes into the record and is given to the constituent service team. In terms of where shelters are located, DHS has the discretion to place them anywhere in the city. They're supposed to allocate them evenly under a policy called fair share, and they have reported that our concentration of facilities is average. But we have some large facilities that serve homeless New Yorkers, including the men's shelter, the children's center, and Bellevue Hospital Center, which are all clustered together in the East 20s and 30s along First Avenue. In addition to that, the COVID crisis led DHS to open multiple short-term shelter facilities in our area, mostly in hotels, former hotels. And several of these have been clustered in our district, especially along 29th and 30th Streets. Some of those have closed, but others are still open. And the situation we're going to talk about today has led to the opening of new facilities to handle the influx of families. DHS knows that we consider this part of our district to be oversaturated. We're on record that we don't think that they're applying fair share correctly. And there's also another area at the north end of our district that has a cluster of facilities. Just to get this on the record, our chair is in regular contact with the 29th Street Association, which is dealing with some quality of life issues, and so communication is happening with the people in that part of the district. So I'm gonna break for a second, take a sip of water, and then I'm gonna kick off a conversation about the current situation. So what we're here to talk about today is that a large influx of migrant families with children from Central America has arrived in New York since May. So far, it's in the range of 6,000 people, which is a large bulge for the New York City shelter system to absorb at one time. You've heard about the buses of migrants coming from Texas, but the influx actually began a few months earlier and would be happening regardless, because people are drawn to New York for all of the reasons that have drawn some of us to the city. And most of the people in this group are applying for asylum. As I said a minute ago, DHS by law accommodates anyone who arrives, regardless of their immigration status or anything else. And so far, they have been accommodating these people in about a dozen emergency shelters, mostly in converted hotels. They're in 4 boroughs. I can't remember if it's Manhattan or Brooklyn that has the most, but they're shared across the city. And to be clear, DHS doesn't like using hotel shelters. They're an efficient way to provide safe shelter for people. They're expensive. The buildings are not designed for this purpose, but the people are here. Families need to be housed together, and there's limited family space in the shelter system. And so DHS is looking to open more temporary facilities throughout the city, and possibly to open a new intake center so that these people can be accommodated more quickly and efficiently. And just to say this, we don't have any new information about the proposal to open an intake center since what I shared with the committee previously, which is that it's something that has been that DHS is looking into. There was one story covering it in the Post, but beyond that, we don't know anything other than that it won't be in our community district. And as part of intake and shelter services, the people who arrive get connected to healthcare, and children get enrolled in school right away, and then other social support follows over time. One of the temporary shelters is in the Hotel Marcel at 24th Street and 3rd Avenue. If I were around the corner from this desk, I'd be able to see it out the window. I live on 3rd Avenue, so I'm across the avenue from it, not on the side street, but I can still see the corner directly out my window. And we're going to talk about the Marcel and related quality of life issues in a few minutes after we have a committee discussion about the situation in general. To tee this up, I don't really think there's a role for our committee to play in terms of making short-term policy recommendations on how to address this continuing growth in the homeless population, which is mostly made up of people who are in emergency straits. But I wanted to bring the topic to the committee for discussion in case anyone has any questions about the situation that I can answer, or aspects that you want to talk about. And remember, we're not here to talk about the broader politics of migration or how these people get to New York or whether they should be accommodated. They must be accommodated by law, and we're here to talk about how that happens. So I'm going to invite members of the committee, anyone who wants to speak, to raise your Zoom hand, and you will be called on in order. And I just want to note that Katie Loeb is here from Councilwoman Carlina Rivera's office, paying attention to this. and we'll also be noting any comments that we make. So if there are any hands, I don't see any here.
There's a member of the public with their hand raised.
Okay, hang on just one second. I see Deborah Rice. Let's defer conversation about the Marcel until right after this part of the conversation. But if you have a comment about the situation in general, I'm happy to have you speak for a few minutes. So let's unmute Deborah Rice.
Hi.
You're unmuted. Hi.
I live on 29th Street, and I just have a couple of quick questions, not about the Marcel, but in general.
That's fine. Let's take them.
I just want to know how somebody, if they want to approach this situation in a productive manner, do you offer any volunteer programs, either with the CB6 directly or programs that are dealing directly with these hotels to make the situation better?
There actually are a couple of things happening. Our electeds and some nonprofits, I believe Open Hand is one of them, are coordinating some efforts to provide community support. For example, I know that some of our electeds had launched a toy drive to help support the kids who are in the Marcel facility, which I think is coming out in the next CB6 newsletter, details about that, or you can email the CB6 office for details. I will ask the office staff to make sure that there's a description of the volunteer efforts that we know about in the next newsletter. And if you are not signed up for that, which I believe usually comes out on Wednesdays, Alex, if you're not signed up, you can sign up for that at the website at cbsix.org. Is there something else you wanted to ask, Deborah, about that?
One other thing. In the general meeting, someone asked the homeless people be bused somewhere else during the day. Yeah. And I'm just wondering if there are the possibility of creating programs that would be available for them from 1 to 6. So children come home without having to deal with them or be frightened by them. And individuals coming home can just have, I don't want to say a moment of peace because that sounds like I don't care about what everyone else is going through, but programs from 1 to 6.
That's actually a good suggestion, I think. I'm making a note here. It's something that we should take back in our conversations with the DHS. I mean, I want to emphasize that these are, adults who have free movement, and some of them have or soon will have opportunities to work or volunteer or, do productive things, but they do have to be around with their kids. I will note that in the Marcel, they have already established some resident programming and some common space that didn't exist when they first moved people in. So there's some space where people can congregate that is indoors and safe and not on the street. But that's different from what you're suggesting. So thank you for that. And I'll propose it to our office as something to suggest.
Thank you for listening.
All right. Hang on, switching back. I see we have one hand up. Maura, your hand is up. Would you like to speak?
Yeah, I have a question for you, Rich. You may be able to answer this because I'm not familiar enough with DHS, but we're considering these as short-term stay locations. Is there a set amount of time that these places are meant to be open, or is it a situational thing where it could be any amount of time?
The contracts are for 6 months, the emergency contracts. They are renewable, but DHS has been very clear that they dislike this solution and would like to move people into either permanent DHS administered temporary housing or into semi-permanent or permanent housing of their own as soon as possible. And one thing that I should note is that I know that during COVID, when we had, for example, in the Marcel, we had a density reduction shelter for men, where people who were residing in the Bronx in a permanent shelter were too crowded to observe social distancing, and so some of them were moved out into this hotel. DHS says that during that period, with this displacement in the hotels, their rate of graduating people out of the shelter system into external housing didn't go down. So they have just as much luck in finding people long-term placements from this system than they do from their own shelters. But the direct answer to your question is 6 months, renewable for another 6 months. But the DHS wants out of the hotel business is the indication that we get.
Okay. So essentially, the people at the Marcel, in best case scenario, would be moved to more permanent housing, hopefully by January 2023, something like that.
Yeah, probably. I mean, that they and now, who knows if the people who are moved out are replaced by new people, because we don't know what the
Okay.
the pipeline is. But yes, I mean they don't move 100% of people into permanent housing in 6 months, but the idea is for DHS to establish facilities that they that are permanent shelter or permanent temporary housing facilities, so that they're not using borrowed space that other people are administering.
Thanks.
Sure. Sandra, I see your hand is up.
Okay. This may not be what we can deal with at this point, but when DHS makes these assignments, do they take into account physical space, outdoor space, community space, or is it this kind of distribution, whatever they call it? What's the terms for equal distribution, and what other criteria do they use in the distribution process? So, we think of you're struggling to find facilities during the daytime for people. And but I don't know what the criteria are. If we have any input, it may be completely irrelevant discussion, but
honestly, I think the criteria are who on the list of approved landlords has space and who on the list of approved operators has capacity. And all that Fair Share does, I believe, is mandate even equitable distribution among community districts, but not in regard to anything other than what district it's in. Like, there's no rule that says it has to be near a park or something like that. I think for longer term facility establishment, they do take those things into account when choosing sites. But it's easier to do outside of Manhattan, where there are more choices of spaces for them. As you know, space is very tight here. But I think it's a good idea for us to propose to them that they take that sort of thing into account.
okay, I mean, that's fine. The other one, right, so it sounds like it's sort of an issue for us, but it may be something that we put the time in and we won't get any, it may not be worth where we want to put our time. The other one is, since the comment about facilities for during the daytime. So I think of the Armory as in the neighborhood, and it's a large facility, over on Lex is.
That's a very good idea. I hadn't thought about that. And I don't know what is happening in the Armory during the day, but certainly whatever it is doesn't take up much of the space. So that is a very good idea, because that's walking distance.
And there must be other places. That one just comes to mind,
Yeah, it's a good one.
Obvious, but I'm sure there are others.
All right. Thank you. I see one more attendee with hand up. It's Kiel LaFrance. Alex, can you please give permission to unmute? Oh, I see you're unmuted.
Hi, thank you. Yes, my name is Keel. I live on 24th Street, right across from the Marcel. My question is what's the proper method to, bring up instances where we see things going on outside that should not be going on? I've been in contact with the manager of the hotel, but she's becoming less and less reliable to get back to me when I see issues out there. I was calling the hotel directly, which I was given the number by the office of Carlina Rivera, but they barely answer the phone. So what should we do when we see, things happening outside, like garbage or kids outside at 1 a.m. That shouldn't be happening? What's our recourse?
I just wrote down this question, and in a minute when we turn to the Marcel, I'll handle it first off.
Okay.
Give me a minute to wrap up this part of the discussion and move on, and we'll go right into that.
All right, thank you.
Sure. Thanks for bringing it up. I don't see any hands up from the committee members. If anyone objects to moving on, please put your hand up. Otherwise, I'll move on, and we'll talk about the Marcel. I see no hands up, so I'm going to move on. Akil, I'm going to set the stage for this conversation, then we'll talk about your question, and then we'll move on to other public comment if we have it. So the Marcel is at 3rd Avenue and East 24th Street. It's on the northeast corner. I am on the northwest corner, right on the corner, so I look out on it, but I look out on the side of it and sort of down the side of the sidewalk. And most of the activity is on 24th Street because that's where the door is. And we know that there's definitely an impact on the family when more than 100 families with children move into one building at once, some of whom have nowhere to go during the day, which is an issue we've been talking about. The impact on my building is fairly light. It was heavier when the Marcel was a men's shelter. There was a lot more street disruption that we noticed from our side. But the impact is more serious for people who live on 24th, especially people who live in 200 East and 215 and the next couple of buildings down that are immediately abutting the shelter. And some of this came up on full board last week, and I want to thank the 3 members of the public who spoke. At least I can't scan this fast enough, but I think at least 2 of you are here. And emphasize that our electeds, including Councilmember Rivera and Senator Kruger, have been involved for at least 2 months that I know of in conversations about this, and are pressing for a resolution of some of the issues. I know that part of the problem is that the buildings adjacent across and next door have scaffolding up, which narrows the sidewalk and pushes people down the street further. And I know that some people further down the block have reported residents using their stoops, sometimes disruptively, sometimes at inappropriate times. There have been some reports of property damage. And I want to emphasize that being on the sidewalk is not illegal, even in groups, but everyone has the right to feel safe to walk on their own street at any time of day or night, and that access to their homes is not disrupted, and that there be a reasonable level of quiet at night. It's never going to be the countryside, but people have the right to not be regularly awakened by yelling and that sort of thing. So here are some steps I know the shelter operator has said they have taken to mitigate the impact. They are providing social education at meal times about how to behave in the neighborhood. The meals are taken on site by the families. There is an 11 p.m. curfew that I don't believe is being enforced. I think it is being treated like a suggestion, and the preponderance of people are in by 11, but certainly it's not the case that there's no street activity after 11. They have opened new social space inside the building that is suitable for children. There was a delay in doing that because they needed to make sure that children didn't have access to the roof for their own safety, but that was resolved. And additionally, the building owner was cutting a door in from the lobby into the restaurant space on the corner, which is also used by the residents, to allow people to move through there without having to go out onto the street. And I believe that's already happened because I've seen less traffic go around the corner. That's the part of the building I look right on. So, and then the other thing is they now have an employee doing rounds in the neighborhood in the afternoons and evenings, someone who knows the restaurant residents, to try to identify any issues or disruptions and deal with them on the spot. But it sounds like from things that some members of the public are saying that these steps are not working as well as they should. And I do want to invite people who want to speak for just a minute or two. We only have a limited time for this, but we have some. Before I do, I want to address Keel's question from before, which is what you should do if you identify issues. One of the things that the operator has said directly to our office is that they want to know about issues immediately as they are happening, because it's easier for them to resolve when they're happening. We do have a phone number that goes directly to the operator. Unfortunately, Keel, I think that may be the number you're calling, where you say you're not getting the response that you need. But we have both a phone number and an email address, and Alex will put in the chat the information that we have. There is that number goes to the number that I'm talking about goes to the operator, not the hotel, meaning it goes to Acacia. I have met the operator, the site manager. He seems perfectly competent and serious, but I can't vouch for his responsiveness. I haven't had to raise any issues. Keel, and others, I think if you're having consistent troubles getting response, you should escalate to the CB6 office, who can get our electeds involved to try to get more consistent resolution. They are accountable to us, the both DHS and the operator. It takes some arm twisting, but we do get responsiveness because they know that it's not. It's both not a good look and not good for them pragmatically not to be a good neighbor. I think there are some others who may want to speak, and if you do, will you please put your hand up in Zoom, and I'll recognize a few people and let you talk about what you've seen. And while you're deciding if you want to speak, I just want to mention one thing that we might consider doing. During the time that the Marcel was a men's shelter, we had 24-hour security on the corner, on the northeast corner of 3rd Avenue East 24th Street. And one entity that pushed for that was my building, 330 3rd Avenue, because at that time we had some people in my building that felt unsafe at night or uncertain. And so far, my building has not experienced any serious issues, but they are watching the situation, not as closely as those of you who live in 200 East are watching it, but still they have their eye on it. But we might consider asking the operator for 24-hour security on one or both corners of 24th Street, 3rd Avenue, and 2nd Avenue. And I know that people on 25th are also aware of the situation, because one of our community board members lives near 25th and 2nd and is as aware of it as we are. So, are there any members of the public who would like to speak now? And after you do, we'll have our committee discussion, then I'll give you another chance to speak after. And I don't right now see any hands up. Oh, Peter Sugar's hand just went up. Alex, can you please give him access to the microphone? All right, Peter, you can unmute and you can speak.
Thank you, Board 6. Can you hear me?
Yep, we hear you fine.
Thank you. Okay. I'm also at 200 East 24th, right across from the Marcel, and I share the issues raised by Keel France, and I think part of it is just some of it is impression, some of it is reality, and I think what we're mostly concerned about is the curfew, the possibility of other problems. There were police issues and violence when it was first opened in maybe August or July. I appreciate the situation the city is in, and I realize, being a former government person, that this is a complicated issue. But I would like to reemphasize what Keith said about our exposure directly across the street, with the scaffolding being up, with people smoking, not just cigarettes and other stuff, and little children in carriages with them, and they don't seem to have much programs with them. I'm fully in favor of the toy drives and all that, because that's it's terribly cruel for little children who have no fault in this, and they need that. So very much appreciate your hearing and giving us information about the curfew, about the 6 and 6 months again, and all that situation. And I'm hoping that the elected officials can hear this as well, and the council member and state senators and all that, and follow up with this so that we feel safe also, because sometimes we don't want to even walk on our side of the street to 2nd Avenue. And I definitely Richard, you know that because you're in the neighborhood.
I mean, I can see down the street. So thank you, Peter, for your comments. Emily, just to let you know, I see your hand up, and you'll be next.
Thank you.
Just to respond to that for a minute. I see what the situation is like in front of 200 East, where people are against the bars, between the bars and your low brick wall.
Yes.
All the time. And I can understand how that would be intimidating, to have essentially a crowd of people outside the building for most of the day. And there does seem to be less like huge clusters of people with children out than there were at the very beginning, because there's now some indoor space. But excuse me, I agree with you that the situation that you're facing is it would make me uncomfortable too. And if our building had that level of crowding in front, our board would be just as concerned as yours is. So I hear that. And it sounds like, to sort of start to digest what we're saying, a couple of the issues are, number one, the curfew needs to be enforced. Yes. Number two, the facility needs to be responsive. If they're going to say they're going to be responsive, they need to actually be responsive. And number three, we need more information about and more substantive daytime activity opportunities that give people a place to be other than right in front of the building. So
yes,
that much I've definitely pulled out of this meeting. Thank you, Peter, for speaking, and I'm going to hand the floor now.
One more quick thing. 2 seconds. 2 seconds. Visiting days on Sundays, many of the fathers come around, and that's an important time for, I think, security to be on hand. I see security on the corner. I'm not sure how much they do. I don't know if it's 24/7 like it was with the men. Just FYI, there is security. There's even a security car that's parked right in front of the hotel's entrance.
That I see.
Yeah.
I actually I park a motorcycle there, and I do feel safer now that there's a security car parked.
So that's right about it. Security is important. And thank you for listening. And I'm sorry for interrupting. Thank you.
No worries. This is what the meeting is for. It's for you.
I know. Thank you.
Emily is next, and then Akil will be after. So Alex, will you please? Emily, you can unmute now and speak.
Let's see, can you hear me?
Yep, we hear you fine.
Okay. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I know many of us in the building are very concerned, not only from a financial.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
Are you in 200? Is that the building you're in? Okay.
Yes, I'm in the Crystal House. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm in the Crystal House. I've been here for over 20 years. Myself and my husband. We're not young, and this has become very, very concerning to us. Going out at night, et cetera, et cetera. Also concerned about the health and safety issues because, as other people have mentioned, these residents leave beer cans, food, all kinds of items around the building, and our doormen have to clean it up, afterwards.
Yeah.
And being that we did have construction going on, I think that was also sort of an OSHA concern because, I don't know what they're touching with their whatever they're utilizing, and fire and all those things come to mind.
I mean, I will say it looks very crowded out there sometimes, and it was crowded before these people moved into the building, and it's even more crowded now. Just because it's your scaffolding is right there on the sidewalk. I mean, it was already hard for you.
Yeah. And I understand that the hotel people don't want them in front of their hotel because they want people to think it's still a hotel, which is one of the other, concerns. And also, of course, from a financial point of view, for those of us who are thinking about selling, brokers come around and of course they have to tell prospective buyers, there's a homeless shelter across the street. It's not good for their values. The value of our properties that we've worked very hard to increase over the years. So there's a lot of different concerns. We have a high maintenance here in this building, and paying that high maintenance and then having this other issue on top of it is very bothersome. So I
hear you, and you raised something that hasn't come up before, which is the OSHA safety implications and public health, and I'll make sure to note that in my notes from tonight.
Yeah, because it's very easy. It's very easy to attract rats and roaches and that type of unwanted pest.
Yeah, I hear you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah, nice to meet you.
Same here.
Keel, I see your hand is up again. Alex will give you speaking permission, then you can unmute.
All right. Thank you. Two questions. Did you mention that the Marcel shelter is just for women and and children? It's not for men?
No, it is actually, according to DHS, it is for families, which is a woman and or a man, although I think always there's a woman and one of them are minor children. But I do think that there are some people who live in the building where there's an associated man who lives somewhere else, a male member of the family who comes to visit. Okay.
And to the trash issue that was just brought up, that's definitely a huge issue. Not only, is it unsightly and there's chicken wings everywhere and my dog walks by and tries to pick up stuff like that, but our building has gotten fined for having garbage in front of it. Now, it wasn't related to the shelter, but it's gotten fined for having garbage in front. An inspector will just come by in the morning before our super has gotten out there and we'll get a fine. So is there any sort of recourse, who has the authority to give the Marcel fines for the garbage that they are leaving out in front of the Crystal House, in front of the parking garage that's right there? Because we're going to end up bearing the brunt of it as buildings if the city inspector ever comes by and sees all that stuff everywhere.
Yeah, it's something that we should bring up. I'm putting that down on my list of things that came up also. Thank you.
Sure.
All right, we have one more hand up, and that's Ian. Alex will give you speaker privileges, and then you can unmute. Okay, go ahead and unmute.
Hey, thanks for taking our question. We're also in Crystal House, 200 East 24th Street. Whether or not they have internal rules, I haven't necessarily seen any discernible improvement. We counted 16 people outside the other evening when we came home, including carriages with, sort of a makeshift iPad watching facility set up on the street. And I guess that sort of raises the question, where's the line between just sort of hanging out on the street that's allowed versus loitering and obstructing the sidewalk, which you cannot do? I guess for clarification, at what point does it become a situation, where people are set up chairs and kids in strollers watching iPads that have been affixed to our scaffolding, Where does that line exist, if it does at all?
I mean, I would say this, and I don't speak for the police or any authority. I'm just speaking for myself. If there is objectively a physical hazard, like if an ADA width path is not provided, that needs to be corrected. I think if people have chairs out on the sidewalk, that situation is a reasonable thing to ask them not to do, because the sidewalk's already tight in this area. It's not suitable to be hanging out space beyond just sort of standing there and chatting space.
Yeah, I mean, there's chairs and tables, and it's good to say that we should ask somebody, but who do we ask? I know.
Yeah. This is something to include in the report here, because I think that is an issue. Like the side of 24th Street that has the Marcel door on it actually has a wide enough sidewalk for some tables. They can set up tables there. Your side does not have enough space for that. So that's I agree with you that is a concern.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, sure. I see Alexandra King has your hand up. And after you, there'll be time for one more comment if there's someone else who wants to put your hand up. Otherwise, we'll move on to the next agenda item. Alexandra, as soon as you get access to your microphone, you can unmute. And there you go. You can unmute and speak.
Okay, thank you. I just had one question, if whether or not, I believe it's an NYU dorm that's across the street.
Yeah, I saw your note in the Q&A.
Yeah, so I was just wondering if perhaps NYU has a lot of pull in the city, if they got involved in any way to try and help either getting the security or other ways to kind of better the situation outside on 24th Street. Maybe they could have some influence over that.
They might be able to have some influence over that. And also it's an opportunity for the people who live in the dorm to get involved in the community and provide some practical support. I think it's a very good idea.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
I look out, my other side of my apartment looks out directly into the dorm. I can see 100 college students right now out my window. They seem to be mostly freshmen and sophomores, or first and second year students. So the extent to which they can provide practical support is limited, but it's not zero. And that is actually an ingenious idea that might lead somewhere. So thank you.
Thank you.
All right. I'm going to move on unless, let me just see. I see that Katie Loeb is in the chat, and I do want to give her an opportunity to speak for just 1 minute about the situation, if there's something that she would like to pass along to this community. Katie is on the staff of Councilmember Rivera and has been involved in conversations about this from the beginning. I've been on calls with her with the shelter operator, so she's unmuted, and I'll hand her the talking stick.
Thank you so much, Rich, and thank you everybody for coming and sharing this, and for contacting our office with these concerns. I think we all have a lot of concerns around the health and safety of the community and of people inside the shelter. And so it's very good to hear kind of the experience on 24th Street. And we've been in contact with the shelter. One of the things that we tried to do as soon as we knew the shelter was opening was be able to provide the families and the shelter operator with the resources that our neighborhood has to offer. And so that's parks and playgrounds and libraries that are close by, that will give people things to do that are not just hanging out on the sidewalk. And so, we made flyers and distributed them to the families. And we heard after the flyers were distributed that a lot of the concerns, most of the people were finding places in the area to spend their time. And of course, then we heard about the ongoing concerns with some of the more disruptive behaviors, such as, the trash and the littering and, staying out really late. And so we've been in contact with the operator to find ways to help address these concerns directly. We've heard from the operator that their security person is going out at night now and in the evenings and trying to bring people back into the shelter. And they're also talking about, sort of whether or not people can find, have needs that this particular shelter can't provide, but that can be found somewhere else within the shelter system. So that's a conversation that's ongoing. We want to be able to make sure that as a lot of these families are coming to New York from other places and under duress, that they have the resources that they need to have a safe and healthy experience here, as well as have the neighborhood, also have a safe experience. So we've been working with our elected colleagues and with the community board. And I just want to thank everybody for taking the time tonight. And if you need anything from our office, you can contact District 2 at council.nyc.gov. And we're in discussion with the operator, so we'll be following up on individual complaints. But they do say, as Rich and the community board said, to contact them directly in the moment so that they can address the concern instead of, waiting and having it take longer.
Thank you, Katie. Perry, I see your hand is up, and I'm going to call on you, and then we're going to move the agenda right after you. So Alex will give you access to your microphone, and then you can unmute. So stand by. Wait, Perry, what happened? Your hand is down.
No, can you hear me?
Oh, yeah, I hear you now.
Okay. So I also live in the Crystal House. A lot of the same thoughts that everybody else was sharing. But now, Katie, as you were speaking, I look out exactly to the hotel. The security is doing nothing on their end. I can tell you that for sure. They tell them to come over to our side of the street. There was a huge fight last week. I actually took video of it for the whole 15 minutes. Security guards, there's 2 of them just standing there, did not get involved at all. They were just there. I'm surprised the police were not called. And then he asked them to go to the other side of the street. Again, opened my window and listened and saw everything happening. So maybe as much as you guys are hoping security is helping, they are really not doing much on that end. People are staying out till 2 o'clock in the morning, drinking, smoking, yelling with kids. I can hear it as I'm trying to sleep. And security continues to not address the situation. So I think that as much as putting security there and having a car there, it really has not made any difference. And I don't see any improvement. I actually think the crowds of people are getting worse as the days go by. And I work from home. As I mentioned in the meeting last week, I'm a social worker who works with the Medicaid population. My whole job is helping people every single day. I work from home and I'm constantly hearing yelling and screaming outside my window, which is uncomfortable, unsafe. I don't feel comfortable walking outside. So I do want to reiterate that the security is really not doing anything on their end over there.
All right. Thank you. All right. So I'm going to call on Matthew Weintraub from our committee, and then we'll move on to the next topic.
So from what I know about private security companies, their employees are actually they're trained to not get involved in physical conflict with people. So if you're expecting security officers to, I guess, break up that fight, that's not exactly, I don't think that's actually their professional duty. And I think that would fall maybe under law enforcement, just to explain maybe why security might not be doing what you think they should be doing.
All right, thank you. Sandra, your hand is up.
Yeah, let's see. A couple of things. One is, along with the Armory, is get involved with some of the religious institutions around, again, that have space, would be a thought. But the other one, which is, I don't know where the community policing is on this, on this issue. I don't know how that works. But the problem is it turns into a law and order issue, which seems really unfortunate, right? I mean, and the solution is that, which is what one hopes wouldn't be the direction. So that's just a comment. But the third one is, where's DHS in all this? It's really interesting. The whole conversation is about security and the hotel, but this has evolved because the placement. And it looks like DHS disappears at that point. It becomes the obligation of the hotel to figure this out. So where's DHS in terms of its responsibility?
It's mostly the responsibility of the operator, Acacia, that has been hired by DHS. But you're right. I mean, they establish the contract and they move people in. It's not like they dump people, like they are in collaboration with Acacia, but they are not the daily operators. You're right. And it might be a good idea for us to make sure DHS is aware of the level of disruption that some of the neighbors are experiencing.
Well, we could start with why isn't a representative here tonight from DHS to take
Well,
part
we
in the
didn't invite them.
conversation?
I mean, I can't. Yeah, I can't fault them for that. Because when we scheduled this, I didn't expect there to be so much discussion about the Marcel in particular when we put this on the calendar. So, I mean, there's plenty to fault them for, but let's not fault them for that. That isn't fair.
But I wonder if that's one
right.
of the things we could do also as a community recommendation is they have to be more involved in this in a very obvious way. So
that's a very good idea. All right. Thank you all. Thanks to the members of the public in particular. We're going to move the agenda. You are welcome to stay, although things are going to get more boring as we go through budget requests for the next half hour. But we'll keep you posted if anything happens. And do sign up for the CB6 newsletter on the CB6 website at cbsix.org. All right. I'm going to move on to the second agenda item. And we are here to talk about our committee's budget requests for 2023. It's actually for the 2024 budget year, the budget year that begins next July 1 and goes to the following July 1. And I'm going to give a little background, and then we're going to put a spreadsheet up and have a concrete conversation. We kept on pushing this forward through the spring because we had other business. We had negotiations about another homeless shelter that took a bunch of attention, and then budget requests are always boring and nobody wants to talk about it. So it's easy to kick to the next month, but we've now hit a hard deadline and we got to get this resolved tonight. The context here for our new members is that every year at this time, the community board submits a consolidated set of budget requests to the city. The ones that our committee prepares, usually there's somewhere between 5 and 10 requests that we have. They go to the CB6 budget committee, which I believe someone here is on. Can't remember who. It must be Nad. Yes, I see you. Yeah. So you're gonna get a double whammy of this month. And then the budget committee consolidates all the budget requests from all of the committees into a single set of formal requests. There's this gigantic Airtable that the office uses to keep track of all of it. It's really a big monster. And this all goes into the city in a complicated form where there are maximum lengths for the fields and how many characters and all this nonsense. So these serve two purposes. One, they are a way that we tell the city what our policy priorities are. Like we could say the city should improve its enforcement of affordable housing laws by hiring housing inspectors. Or we can make concrete and specific requests related to our district, like we want a new senior center. And sometimes our city council members will spend their discretionary funds to fulfill our requests. For example, we asked for new security doors at Strauss houses, which is one of the communities in our district that is operated by NYCHA, the New York City Housing Authority. And Councilmember Rivera dedicated budget to that, and it's going to happen. It's going to take a year, but it is now underway. So here's how the process works. We look at last year's budget requests and decide whether to keep them or change the priority. Then we consider adding new requests. Then I'll package up what we say and send it along to the budget committee. And I want to note that we don't have to pass a resolution tonight. We just need specific direction as to the priorities of the committee. So, Alex, I would appreciate it if you would open and share the spreadsheet that I sent you a link to this morning. which contains all the information that's here on the Airtable. So you can close the Airtable. So
Yeah,
stand by,
absolutely.
everyone.
And also, just so everybody knows on the call, if you ever want to take a look at the CB6 budget request Airtable, you can check it out on our website on the Budget and Governmental Affairs Committee page.
All right, so waiting for sharing.
Can you see it?
Yes.
Okay, great.
We can see it. So I actually have this open separately, or I will in a second. So I'm going to make edits live based on this conversation. And Alex, feel free to make your own edits if you need to. So what I'd like to do for the next few minutes is walk through last year's requests, talk briefly about them, and decide whether we should keep them and how to change their priority. And I'm just going to jump in and we'll go one by one. So the high level comment I have about this is that our budget requests have been biased in favor of homeless services budget requests in the past, because there's been a situation of crisis and inaction. We've actually had some action over the past couple of years. And so I'm thinking we might want to change the balance of requests this year. But to start, so we've asked for more affordable housing to be preserved and developed in the district. The response from the city was to essentially do nothing, to continue what they were doing with existing resources. And I'll just run through all these. So basically nothing happened. We asked for dedicated homeless outreach teams at Bellevue South Park and in the area around Bellevue Hospital Center. We didn't get a response to our request, but outreach was funded in 2021. And there is more street homeless outreach in that area than there was. So in my opinion, this is not the highest priority for Bellevue South anymore. We've asked for more school services for homeless students who are at risk, inherently at risk. A large share of the probably all the kids of elementary school age who are in the Marcel have been assigned to PS 116, which is on East 29th, 30th Street between 3rd and 2nd Avenues. And so probably the need for this has gone up. We asked for more supportive housing, which is income restricted housing where services are provided on site, social services. We actually got a large supportive housing project approved this year, which will take a couple of years to build, but it's coming, which I think is a good sign. So if we decide that this isn't one of our highest priorities, I think that's okay. We've asked for senior housing, nothing has happened. And for additional funding for in-home senior support. The specific response from the city was, we will accommodate this within existing funding, which I don't think is that helpful. We have two budget requests about public toilets, one for pay toilets and sort of 24-hour facilities, and the other for a contract to allow homeless individuals access to toilets and showers, because there's a model operating in Upper Manhattan that seems to be successful. And nothing happened on those. We got our doors at Strauss houses. If Katie's still here, thank you for that. And finally, we asked for stabilization beds, which is a form of shelter space that is transitional between street housing and shelter housing for people who are not ready to admit themselves to a shelter. We actually got additional stabilization beds in our district in the current budget year, which was a win. I mean, I don't know if our budget requests make it happen, but it did happen. So I'd like to ask if there's any discussion about these items and what you all think we should do with them. And I am going to, let me bring this back up so I can see who's got their hand up. Hang on a second. No. How do I do this? Oh. All right. I have to hold on. I got to take this off full screen. And then there, now I can see whose hands are up. Maura, your hand is up.
Yes, my question is about the public toilets. I know
Yeah.
at the end of last year, we passed a resolution as a committee to
Oh, you
request
emailed me this
more.
with this question.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
Um,
I know that we
the
have actually taken action to move this one along. I know nothing's happened yet, but does that affect how we want to think about it in terms of our budget moving forward?
that legislation is not passed yet. It's still pending. It has the support of the borough president, but I don't believe it has enough support to survive mayoral veto, so it probably won't be voted on without some pressure. Our budget requests won't influence legislative action, but they do indicate to the departments involved that we support this. My inclination would be to leave at least the public toilets item on as a statement of support for the borough president. But if there are other things that we decide are more important, it wouldn't be a disaster if it comes off. I think we're going to need to keep the pressure on for a few years, though, to make anything happen, because that resolution was in support of legislation that only required studying locations for public toilets in each zip code.
Okay.
In terms of the contract toilets, nothing has happened, and we can either decide that is a priority or not a priority.
I support leaving them both on then, and think that your argument to keep it there to put pressure is good.
Okay. Matt, I see your hand is up.
Yeah, I thought I mentioned, I think in a previous meeting, I know I'm super new, so there haven't been that many, but with Bellevue South Park under reconstruction, in the original, there was never any plan to put a public toilet there, which I thought was a huge missed opportunity. And I mean, I think it's worth keeping on this as a priority because it just seems like really low hanging fruit. I think it's really foolish to not put something there.
I'm going to make a note that our request should include toilet in Bellevue South Park. I remember that you said that. All right. What else? What should we do with the rest of these? I'm gonna hang on, Nat. I'll call you in a second. I'm gonna propose that we take a dedicated homeless outreach at Bellevue South off, unless anyone has an objection, because it's not. That was dealing with a specific urgent priority that isn't really an urgent priority right now. Nad first, and then Sandra.
Yeah, mine's more just the quick admin thing to just remove the doors at Strauss houses. I think we can I think it's pretty clean to just remove that because it's happened.
Yeah. Okay, great. All right, Sandra, you're up.
Oh yeah, I would be supportive of senior housing, but if nothing, what if some of these that are sort of dead issues and we'd be wasting our time?
Yeah, I mean,
I don't know.
There's the question of, is it a dead issue and we're wasting our time? And there's a question of, is it so vague that like it's never going to lead to any concrete action? Like even something like build more affordable housing is not really like who's gonna say yes, we'll do that. Like it's so fluffy. So if we want to change the wording of these, we can also do that. Like in terms of senior housing, for example, like Sandra, what would you propose that we ask for? I'm not putting you on the spot. I'm just
I don't know
asking,
because I just see it in there, and this one I don't really know how the budget works or what we're actually asking for. So I certainly know, but I don't know if it's this really went to the pandemic and so on. Is there's very little outreach to seniors in our community on a lot of levels, and that's problematic. And so again, I don't know the number of senior housings that exist in the neighborhood or community spaces for seniors, but all of that, it seemed to me during the pandemic became clear that it's a deficit in the community.
Yeah. senior housing is it's two issues. It's building, constructing or provisioning buildings that are income restricted and I don't know, maybe age restricted. I'm not sure how it works. And it's providing funding for age in place support programming. And which is, I mean, I think given that a lot of our districts is essentially a naturally occurring retirement community with services very close by, you know, it's ideal conditions for people to be able to stay in their homes if they can afford it.
Yeah.
So maybe I'll make a note that we should explicitly include age in place services.
Yeah, that would be terrific. Okay.
Okay. All right, so I'm gonna, we need to save a few minutes to talk about the second half, so I want to try to nail down the top. And my inclination is that we remove stabilization beds because we just got some stabilization beds, and you know, DHS is investing in some alternative services for street homeless people. Supportive housing, I would keep because it's a long-term important thing for us to have, but it doesn't solve immediate issues. So possibly lower priority. And Abby, I see your hands up, so I'm going to call on you.
Yeah, I've been on the committee for a while, and I feel like every year senior housing is a very amorphous thing that always gets included. But I actually liked how you described it, and I would suggest splitting it into the two issues you raised. One being build more affordable senior housing, and the other being programs to age in place. I think that's just much more concrete as to what we're asking for.
Yeah, I mean, the more concrete, the better. The more, because if you make it concrete, they have to say no, we're not doing it.
Right.
If they don't do it. All right, Abby. Since Abby is the vice chair, I would ask your opinion on these two affordable housing and supportive housing, and on school services for homeless students.
Well, I think in the past, regarding the first one, that's been the top priority of our committee, but it's also been the top priority of our board. So it's my understanding that when these budget requests get compiled in the budget committee then ranks them. And so just for the sake of continuity, I think we should certainly keep affordable housing, given that it's been not only the top priority of our committee, but also the top priority of our board for quite some time.
It seems like a core concern that cuts across social and economic tiers. Everyone in the district cares about it. So keep that in. What's your opinion about school services? Is that the sort of thing that we should keep?
I would be interested to know what the Youth and Education Committee is proposing. I don't know if we can pull those up, because there might be some overlap there.
Yeah. Alex, if you want to switch to the Airtable, you can find that. And I'm gonna move the conversation on while you do, and we can start talking about these proposals lower down. Oh, of course, no one can see them anymore. So hang on while the Airtable appears. And I hope you all don't feel like I'm grinding through this. I'm just trying to keep this efficient. Eric, your hand is up. Go ahead.
Yeah, sure. I just wanted to check in quick regarding the additional or proposed services, specifically PS. Many people probably are aware, but when students who experience homelessness join the school community, they don't come with sufficient funding to provide the services that are required. So the schools don't get additional funding. They just get, basic Title I funding for students in that situation. So I just think
is there a potential budget request to appropriate funds to fully fund each seat that is occupied by a student experiencing homelessness who's added to a school?
Yeah, I mean, I think that works. And then, I mean, just my old recollection is, you know, students who come to a school after October 31st actually come with no funding. They may make specific appropriations for students in this situation, but in the past, you know, that was the case. That the register closes on October 31st and your school funding is frozen based on the register on October 31st. And if a school like PS 116 is going to have an influx of students after that, there wouldn't be any funding associated with it.
That is, this is why we have domain experts on the committee. I think you just solved the problem about what to ask for. So thank you. All right, so Alex has got nothing. There's nothing from youth and education, but I'm going to propose to John that they take, unless someone objects, I'm going to propose to John that they take the school services for homeless students, because I know it's something that he personally considers a priority. He's brought it up before. All right. So, Alex, if you wouldn't mind, can you switch back to the spreadsheet and let's run through some of these issues, some of which are things that you all raised in email, and some are things that I put on here. Stand by, and you'll get sharing. And so we're going to look at the second half. All right. So the first is, this is something that a couple of people brought up. Sandra emailed me about this year. Today. And Kyle agrees that this would be a good idea for us to focus more on the needs of renters this year and in a more deliberate way. And, you know, one of the things I would like to do this year is for us to, as a project, come up with a sort of comprehensive playbook to improve the situation for renters. You know, do a bit of research and thinking about it. And as part of that, here are two areas where funding requests might make a difference. One is to fund the Department of Housing and Housing Preservation and Development so that they can better enforce rent stabilization because they are staff constrained. And the other is to fund legal advocates for people facing eviction. In theory, there's a right to counsel, but there's no counsel. And the mayor, I believe about 2 weeks ago, said that he's going to start asking lawyers to work for free, which, you know, I mean, that's great, but we really should provide counsel as a public service. Is there any thought about either this macro issue or these two requests? Oh, I can't see you anymore. Exit full screen. Abby, your hand's up.
Yeah, on the right to counsel piece, so I am a lawyer and I know something about this issue. I do think that they have been rolling out the right to counsel across the city for the past 2 years. I don't think it's everywhere, but I do think it's being rolled out piecemeal. I would actually like to look into this more because I have a few friends who work for legal aid in their housing department. So I'd be happy to look into it, but I do think it should be a priority of our committee to be knowledgeable about what's happening with right to counsel, understand the challenges of the program, understand the ways in which our law, like how our laws have gaps. I think it just in the housing legal community, this was a seismic shift in how we approached housing court. And I personally would like to know more about where it currently stands.
All right. Well, I'll leave this in your hands, and you and I will follow up in a week or so. And based on what you find, we might propose something here. Sandra, your hand is up.
Yeah, wait. I can't make it unmute. Come on. It won't unmute. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we hear you.
Oh, okay, never mind then. One of the
Oh, now we don't. Or I don't.
Okay, now I think it's unmuted.
Yeah,
What I was
yeah, now
saying
you're
is,
back.
I work with a number of agencies on the west side, and particularly the Upper West Side, in terms of supplying legal aid under the right to counsel. And there are quite a number of agencies that are doing it. What I don't know, and I have not found particularly, is in our neighborhood. That's something we really also should be finding out, researching what, the access to counsel to these tenant agencies. So that in itself would be worthwhile to find out.
Okay, Abby, that's on your list.
Oh, good.
Let me move on down the list. Homeless quality of life concerns, what we've been talking about. I think public toilets is covered. Dedicated homeless outreach in hotspot zones is a possibility. Support services for people living in shelters. These are things we talked about earlier. Is there a budget request here? These are not all, what we're doing today is not all the things we care about. It's just the things that have specific budget implications that we're asking for. And so the answer can be no, it's not a budget request issue. All right, so we can leave that one and go on. We've talked a bit about NYCHA. NYCHA is in the midst of a slow rolling deferred maintenance emergency. Things seem to be getting worse year by year rather than better. And it occurs to me that one thing we might ask for is additional operating funds for NYCHA maintenance to be appropriated. One of the things I would like us to spend some time on in the fall is NYCHA in general. And I was talking to Kyle about this, so I'll follow up with you next month. But this is something that we might consider. Let me run through the rest of these. Long NYCHA waiting list. This next one is basically build more public housing. Sandra, to your point, I'm not sure what the point is, I guess, of saying build more housing, because no department is going to say, yes, you've convinced us, we're going to build more NYCHA housing. Clustering of homeless facilities. This is in response to the feeling that fair share is not being enforced. It is a way of putting additional pressure on DHS to be more equitable by making a concrete proposal that money be spent to make sure that HPD is being enforced. This is not HPD, it's DHS. That DHS is administering its homeless program siting in an equitable manner. I just threw this one in as a possibility. There may be others. And then finally, regarding influx of migrant families, establishing intake centers and more family beds. The more permanent family beds will probably happen anyway, because it's something DHS considers a priority. So I'm going to stop talking, and I'm going to ask if there's any comment. Maura, I'll call you in a second. If there's any comment either on these or on stuff that I didn't think of and put in here, your own thoughts. Maura, go ahead.
Yeah, I want to go back to the second point on the new issues list, establishing support services and day activities or dedicated homeless outreach. I think there may be something we can request here, putting funds towards providing more services, especially given the conversation that we had the first half of the meeting and the 2 points that are being made at the bottom of the list here, because there are so many new people in our district who would benefit from having services. Even something specific like Sandra's suggestion to open up the armory. I think that could qualify here as addressing those concerns. Rich, you're muted.
Sorry, it's because I'm coughing. Matt, your hand is up, and I'm going to stand up. I can still hear you. I'm just going to get a glass of water.
Yeah, I just sorry to keep harping on this public toilet, but I think one thing I'd be interested in is I assume people would be concerned about the facilities being misused in general. And at Bryant Park, they usually have like an attendant regulating the usage of the facility there. And it's honestly one of the nicest public toilets in this grand city that we all call home. So
I have so much information for you on public toilets, and so is Mara, who did some research. I'm not sure you're aware of this, but we are part of a multi-community board coalition trying to get the public toilet problem solved, and we have had 4 months of weekly meetings about public toilets, including presentations by experts. So I agree with this. One thing that's come up in the public toilet working group is two models that work. One is self-cleaning toilets, like the one that exists, I think, in outside of Madison Square Park, and the other is attended toilets, some in collaboration with either neighborhood improvement organizations or coalitions of employers like they have in Battery Park. Oh, sorry, I'm looking at your tiny face up here rather than the one where the camera is.
Well, that's just a job right there. So
yeah. So I think. I mean, you think you agree this is a priority, right? The public toilets. Yeah. All right.
I'd say biggest priority though goes to rent stabilization, like people staying in the neighborhood for longer periods of time means people are investing in the community they live in, have a future in, and that'll just improve public safety in general, in my opinion. So.
Okay. What did I miss in my sort of blinkered run through of this? What other priority issues do you consider important? One thing Sandra raised, for example, is eviction protections that may not have a budget component, but it might. I'm just wondering if there's anything important that comes right to mind that should be on this list. All right, so one last thing I would like to do then, and I know that we could do old and new business forever, but I want to give you folks a break because we've already gone for 90 minutes, so I can do some follow-ups in email, but I do want a sense from this group about what few things are high priority and what few things are low priority, and I will leave that question up for you to interpret in any way. Affordable housing is high priority. Abby, your hand is up.
You mean just in terms of our priority for the year?
For ranking, yes. Like, I'm not going to ask us to do the individual ranking, but I at least need some idea for when I put together a proposal to run by you all in a week.
I think that the public toilets has a lot of momentum at the moment. So should be ranked high.
Okay.
It's my 2 cents.
And it sounds like day activities for people experiencing homelessness is high because it's come up a few times.
Mm-hmm.
And it sounds like services to support renters are high. Abby, do you think that funding for HPD, for rent stabilization enforcement, is important, that specifically?
I would say I'm not knowledgeable enough about this in particular to comment.
Okay. I will look into it, to how bad the situation is.
Right. I know a couple of years ago, after the 2019 housing laws passed, or 2018, 2019.
Yeah.
We had asked not DHS, Department of Socials. I don't know. One of the state agencies.
DHS is a unit of VSS, so it could have been either.
Yeah. One of the state agencies for enforcement of tenant protections, but I don't believe.
Oh, that's DHCR.
Yeah, that's a different issue.
Yeah, this and they also need staff, but we can't get that through this budget process because this is only city budget, not state budget.
Right.
All right. All right. Well, let me leave the floor open and see if there are any other comments, and if not, the next steps here will be for me to digest what we did, which is, this seems like it was all over the place, but it was actually substantive enough for me to get the sense of the committee out of. I will turn this into a proposed ranking, run it by you all, and if there are no objections, I'll turn it into a submission for the budget committee and get them off my back. But also make our formal requests for the things that we need in our district. So I'm going to call this matter closed for now. Before we go on to old and new business, of which there may or may not be any, I want to congratulate Abby on her marriage, which happened at some point in the last 2 weeks. She disappeared unmarried and came back married. And she looks it. She looks completely different. So congratulations, Abby, and thank you for coming back the day after your trip to a community board meeting.
Thank you, Rich. Yes, I was in Europe very recently, so I'm very tired.
All right. I think anything else that we have to discuss, we can defer. So I'm going to waive my chair's report, and I'm going to invite anyone here who would like to raise any old or new business. The only thing I will raise myself is that you all deserve an update on the legislative issues that we provided endorsement of last year, and I'll prepare that for you all in email so that we have something to talk about before our next meeting. Is there any other old or new business? All right, seeing none, I am going to adjourn this meeting at 8:04 p.m. Thank you all for your enthusiastic participation. I had a good time, despite the fact that some of these issues are kind of dire, and I think we're going to make a difference this year. So I look forward to seeing you all in a month. Thank you.
Thanks, Rich.